What follows are my prophecies for what will happen in the world of computing in the year 2025. Now I hear what some of you were saying. Prophecies? Lunduke, don't you mean predictions? These aren't really prophecy. You're not a prophet here. And to that I will say, hmm? Um, yeah, predictions, but prophecy sounds cooler. So what I'm thinking here is this: I could use an opportunity to think about not what's happening in 2020, right? Not any of the news, not what the next few months brings, not the tech news over the last couple of years, which, let's face it, most of the tech news has been kind of bleak. There's been a few little bright spots, but overall, it's been less than ideal. So, what I want to think about is, what do I think, logically, reasonably, the year 2025 looks like for desktop computers, handheld computers, cell phones, whatever, tablets, and servers, all of it, all computing devices in the year of our Lord 2025. And now I'm not going to put together a wish list. This is not my Lunduke how I think it should be list, because that list is going to be ridiculous and there's just zero chance of my wish list coming true. That's a different topic. But realistically, what do I think it looks like 5 years down the line? It's not like, it's not just next year. It's not what are my predictions for what products will launch this year or something ridiculous like that. And it's not looking out at the year of our Lord 3047, which, at that point you can just make up anything, because who knows by that point. But 5 years out, what does 5 years look like? Here's what I think. Here's my prophesy. I think, let's start with desktop computing. I think 5 years from now, desktop computing will look almost identical to what it looks like now. I think it will have changed very little. We will have no significant new functionality. Visually and user metaphorically, it will be pretty much what we've got right now. I think that we will have new versions of some of the same operating systems and new versions of some of the same Office and application suites, but by and large, we'll have roughly what we have right now, both in terms of content, usability, look and feel, and capability. But I think there will be one way in which things will change dramatically. I predict that Microsoft will no longer have the dominant desktop operating system in 2025. Now, this is not yay, I think Linux is going to take over the desktop in 2025, because I don't think it will. What I think is going to happen is we're going to see a leveling out of market shares and percentages over the next 5 years. We've kind of seen a little bit of that happening already if you watch the market share numbers. I do not believe that any one Linux distribution, or even all standard traditional Linux distributions in aggregate, are going to suddenly take over the top spot and have 60% market share. No. I could see it getting up to 5-6% market share. It's theoretically possible. I could also see macOS increasing market share a little bit, and I could also see some of Google's offerings, some of which may not even be out yet, increasing a little bit as well. And I think overall we're going to see a lot of players move up a little bit and Microsoft come down a little bit. Pretty simple. Pretty simple. And in the end, Microsoft will have sub 50% market share for sure. And I think it'll go even further than that. I think it'll come down far enough to where at least one other operating system from one distributor is going to edge out Windows as the most sold on the most computers, right? I think that's inevitably going to happen, and that doesn't spell, in my opinion, the downfall of Microsoft either. The way they've kind of positioned themselves over the last few years, I think that they'll weather that storm just fine. I mean, they're shipping devices with the Surface name now, or I don't know if it's shipping yet, but soon, with running Android, right? So I don't foresee them having difficulty in maintaining their giant megacorp status, but I do see Windows no longer being the dominant operating system, and that's reasonable. It's been dominant for a long time, almost a weirdly long time. That's not usual. I mean, insofar as we have a long track record to look at from the computer industry, whoever is in the top spot tends to change fairly frequently every couple of years. They jockey for position until Windows, and then Windows just held on to it. And I think that's about to end, which is an end of an era, if you will. But I think it's still going to be a powerful, widely spread operating system, but I don't think it's going to be the dominant one. So, that said, I also think one of the net impacts of that is a very negative one, unfortunately, from my opinion. I think we're going to see an increase in web technology applications, where more and more applications are built over the coming couple of years, especially, that are just all JavaScripted from here to kingdom come. That's not amazing. I don't love that. I don't love that at all. Okay, see, now I'm getting bummed out. Now I'm all bummed out. I wish I didn't do this. Nah, I just think this is what's going to happen. I think there's going to be a segment of the user base who are tired of those sorts of things and are going to gravitate towards native applications, just like we see right now. And that segment of the population may even grow. But I think the total number of companies that are producing web-based technology stack applications, I think that's going to expand. I mean, we've even seen it with desktop environments on the Linux side of things. The GNOME desktop environment, it is GNOME, it is not GNOME, because a GNOME is not a real thing. um, because GNOME already adopts JavaScript and those sorts of things, and lots of CSS and all sorts of stuff. It's web technology, is just infused inside the GNOME desktop environment nowadays. So I think that's going to become an increasingly common thing, and we're just going to see more Electron-style applications, more JavaScripty, web HTML5e applications. I think that's just inevitable, and that's not fantastic. At least not from my point of view. I know some of you are going to think that's pretty great. Uh, I don't love it, but what are you going to do? I think moving from there, though, I think there's going to be an interesting shift in the server side of things. So the next 5 years, I think, is going to be fascinating when we're talking about servers. So I think you almost got to break that next 5 years up into two chunks. That first chunk, the next 2.5 years, I think you're going to see continued dominance of the big virtualized compute centers, the Azures and the Google Compute Clouds and the Amazon Web Services, those sorts of things. I think those are going to continue to grow because they provide a lot of benefits for a lot of different companies and how they work, and there's been a lot of investment in the technology stacks around them, and I think that that's going to grow and expand. But I think there's going to be a realization, let's say 2 years out, maybe 3 years out, somewhere in there, where there's been some significant drawbacks to that infrastructure. We now have lowered numbers of points of failure, so that means there's more things that could crash now put into a single switch. So if you've got singular data centers running just huge quantities of services and that goes down, there's only so much you can do to mitigate that. And I think, there you go, that's a better way to put it. Tripping over my words. It's hard to have a thought and then think, gee, thought, you should be words now, and then make them come out the mouth. I should try to work on figuring out how to do that well. That would be good for my career. So I think that's going to be an issue, but I think an even bigger issue is going to be security. When you've got single physical institutions that hold such a large amount of data from disparate organizations and companies, I think a couple of less than ideal hacks and compromises and security and data breaches on some of those data centers, whether it's some of the Google data centers or some of the AWS data centers. I think will result in people freaking out a bit and pulling a lot of their server infrastructure more towards, I wouldn't say completely old school, but a little more old school, in that they'll move more towards having physical boxes. Even if they're co-located at someone else's site, having their own physical boxes more often than just a managed cloud infrastructure. A lot of companies already do that because of security reasons a lot of times, and for control and performance reasons sometimes too. But I think that's going to become more the norm. I think we'll move away from cloudy infrastructures and more towards, I have a series of servers. Here's my servers, here's my backup servers, here's my mirror servers, right? And here's all my database shards everywhere on different servers. And I think we're going to go back more towards that. And realistically, looking at so many of the prices for like ARM servers, you can get physical ARM servers for really, really reasonable prices nowadays. And I could see that becoming a much more prevalent way to go. So I think that's going to happen on that side of things. And then on the mobile side of things, I think nothing of interest will happen. Yeah, exciting, right? I think Android and iPhone, I think more Android and iPhone, less Android and iPhone, more Google and Apple will retain control of the mobile space over the next 5 years. I think that there will be continued certain levels of success in pushing in other types of operating systems and software stacks on the mobile side of things. I think companies like Pine and Purism and folks like that will have a certain amount of success, but never really fully crack into that mainstream market share. So folks like you or I might be likely to pick up a more GNU slash Linuxy. Did I just say GNU? A new, because again, a GNU is not a G word. A new is. GNU slash Linux a phone, because that's the kind of nerds we are, but I don't think it's going to move much past that. And I think that's enough, though. There's enough of us to make those financial successes over the short term, and even into the through and past 5 years out from now. And I think we're also likely to see at least one or two other little contenders pop up. Like we saw Microsoft give it a try. I think we could see Microsoft try to give it another try. I think we could see some of the Linuxy companies branch off and kind of come up with their own thing. I think we could see some of the various other phone firms out there really give it a go with their own systems, like Samsung, things like Tizen and whatnot. I think we could see them give it a more of a go, but I don't foresee them breaking into the market share. Not because it's not possible. I think that, and I've even predicted in the past that iOS was going to falter in market share, and I was totally wrong when I did that prediction. And I think that eventually it's inevitable. No operating system is going to stay dominant in its field forever. It just is not going to happen. It's never happened before, and it shan't happen again. Um, but just the same, I just don't see the market lining up in such a way that it's likely to happen in the next 5 years. So when you flash forward. Oh, and hardware. Computer hardware will continue to get a little bit faster. And for a while, for a little while. And then it's going to get a lot more expensive. And then it's also not going to get as fast for a while. What? Yeah, this is where geopolitical politics and geopolitical politics, uh, automated teller machine. Again, words hard. But I think because there's potential for deteriorations with not just trade relations, but diplomatic status with other countries. Things are tense in certain parts of the world that do various chip manufacturing, and I could foresee sometime in the next 5 years access to certain things from those regions could dry up, which means that we'd be reliant on, let's say, in various other parts of the world. And I'm recognizing that this show gets watched all over the world, but predominantly in North America, but all over the world. But in, like, let's say, Western Europe, Africa, South America, Australia, United States, Canada, all Japan, even all these places. I think that is going to cause a lot of industries to be like, well, we can't get chips X, Y, and Z, but we can get some alternate chips that have some benefits and some drawbacks of A, B, and C, but maybe we'll lose some clock speed here. Maybe we don't have the capacity to produce, an extreme amount of these chips currently at our various fabricators. I said that in the coolest possible way. You know what I'm saying? So I think that the likelihood is that things will continue to slowly ramp up over the next year or two, maybe, and then I could see something occurring geopolitical politically over in right in the middle of that 5 year stretch somewhere where certain chips dry up, maybe RAM prices get real high for a while, maybe SSD prices go up, but certain other chips, like maybe some of the Intel chips that are fabricated here in the States, may continue to do well and make, these sorts of things. I think it's going to vary, but I think it's going to be a weird time in computing because all of the sudden, a lot of computer makers, be they Apple or Dell or some of the smaller ones like the System 76s or the whatnots of the world, I think are going to have to start differentiating themselves not by saying, look, you need to upgrade because look at this new speed, look at this, the new GPU, look at this extra amount of RAM we put in. Those may not become options, and so they'll have to differentiate themselves with truly unique things, unique cases, unique keyboards, unique software bundles, potentially just all new types of buses and different bits of hardware that maybe weren't around before. I think that's something we're going to have to see more of, which I think could result in 2025 being an incredibly interesting period of time because you'll have multiple operating systems all jockeying for position with each other with no clear leader. You'll have computer hardware makers like, say, desktops and laptops and whatnot trying to try different things to make computers a little bit more interesting and compelling to encourage people to buy upgrades when maybe RAM and clock speed increases just aren't doable anymore. The operating systems themselves, I think, won't be terribly fascinating up until that point, but by the time we hit to 2025, I think people could really start to at least try new things, right? Step outside the comfort zone and really just go wild with their operating system and design and try new things. And I think that could be really cool. And I think the move over to using more physical hardware for servers, I think is also a great thing. It's good for security, it's good for privacy, and it's just cooler in my opinion. I don't know if more people will move back towards self-hosted servers, like where they actually have on-site physical servers, which is both good and bad. I mean, there's pluses and minuses to that, but I kind of would like to see that more, just because it's cool. I mean, I know some places already do that a lot, but I wouldn't mind seeing that more. That sounds like a lot of fun. The phone side of things is, I think, just going to be super uninteresting. I think they'll throw a whole lot of new technology that won't really matter at it. I think they'll be faster and have more RAM and whatnot than they do now, but ultimately have roughly the same capabilities. I mean, you can use a phone right now for playing fantastic games, recording 4K video and editing it, and doing graphic design on it, and doing all sorts of stuff on some of the higher end handsets out there. So there comes a point where is this going to go from here? again, I think over the next 5 years, nowhere all that exciting. But after that, I think will be some of the same issues that we see on the desktop side of things, where people will have to try some more interesting things, be more innovative, outside the box thinking, if you will. That's my thoughts. That's my thoughts for 2025. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. If you want to tell me about your thoughts, the best ways to do that or over on Locals. Lunduke.locals.com. That's where we're all hanging out. All the cool kids are hanging out over there right now. It's fantastic. It's sort of like Twitter, except it's a subscription service. It's super cheap subscription service. You get shows. You get weekly custom shows exclusive for the subscribers, which you also get over on Patreon. Go check it out. Go over to lunduke.com. There's some links, clicky some links. Go check it out. I highly recommend the local side of things. There's no drive-by trolls. It's just a sweet, nice community of super nerds talking super nerdy stuff. We've been talking about setting up Hugo websites. We've been talking about installing Haiku on netbooks. There was some discussion around putting virtual machines on AMD rigs. Like, it's all over the map, and just like it should be. Anyway, go check it out. It also helps keep the lights on here at the Lunduke Journal, also known as me. Anyway, I hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. I hope your Friday is fantastic. I hope the weekend ahead of you is like none other. Either it is the most boring weekend and you deserve a nice boring weekend, or it's super fun and exciting in an awesome way. Whichever one you want, you deserve it. All right, everybody. I'll talk to you later.